Week 9 of the fantasy football season is here. We're taking a look at some of the best players to buy in your fantasy leagues. And Dave, this is the time for people to start taking swings in their leagues, whether, just like we talked about last week, whether you are a team that is near the bottom of the standings or the top of the standings, this is where you want to make big moves, because you and I talked about this yesterday. The first 8 weeks are not the final 8 to 9 weeks of the season. Everything can change. So this is the time to buy low on some players. And as always, I'm Alfredo Brown, joined by Dave Kluge, and we're going to go through. We actually brought up a ninth one in the pre-show
Yeah.
discussions. So 9 trade targets to take a look at here, Dave. We have some big names on this one. You're going to start us off with a big name and something interesting that you looked up, posted on the social media machine, and want to give you your chance to talk about it.
Yeah, this morning, I couldn't sleep, so I ended up at my desk at like 4:15 this morning and just started running some numbers, and I came up with like this very rudimentary formula, but just to kind of see like who is scoring a lot of touchdowns, who isn't scoring a lot of touchdowns relative to their fantasy points. So like the percentage of fantasy points scored by touchdowns, that tells me like who is prime for regression and who is a guy that you should be buying. And when I ran these numbers, the guy right now who has the fewest percentage of his fantasy points from touchdowns is Justin Jefferson. Just 5.58% of his points this year have come off of touchdowns. I mean, this guy, he's seen 63 targets and has only scored one touchdown. That is assuredly going to bounce back at some point. And we know who Justin Jefferson is. He's eighth in the league in target share. He is seventh in the league in yards per route run. He is commanding an elite target share, and he is giving elite efficiency with those targets as they come to him. And I know right now, I think there's an opportunity to actually buy low here because JJ McCarthy is coming back at some point. There's a lot of concern and a lot of speculation about JJ McCarthy and the soft benching and the ankle injury and what we saw through the early parts of the season. But I'm using that fear to try to buy lower if I possibly can. On top of that, Justin Jefferson has the best remaining wide receiver schedule of any wide receiver. Well, not just Justin Jefferson, but the Minnesota Vikings have the best wide receiver schedule according to the Football Guys strength of schedule tool, but not just from now through the end of the season, the best playoff schedule as well. So we've got this really good tool over at Football Guys where it tells you how many points more or less teams are allowing to that specific position. Week 15, the first week of the fantasy football playoffs, go up against Dallas. Dallas is giving up an average of 8.7 more points per game to wide receivers than anybody else. Next week, Giants, pretty neutral matchup. Then fantasy championship week, week 17, goes up against Detroit, who's given 5.8 more points per game to wide receivers. So we're looking at a very talented player who's drawn an elite target share, is efficient with his opportunities, due for touchdown regression, and has a great remaining schedule. I know this is like an obvious name. Like I'm not telling you Justin Jefferson is a good player. You probably haven't heard of him, but this is a
Might
guy
break
that
out.
right. But this is a guy that has had a quiet season so far by his standards, and I'd be willing to trade Devontae Adams, AJ Brown. Roma Dunze is probably one of the spiciest names that I'll throw out there. Quinshon Judkins, who, I think is a good buy low candidate, but like that's the type of guy right now that if you can move one of these low end RB1s for Justin Jefferson, that's a move I'm trying to make.
I'll say this, especially with a lot of the big names we're going to say today, is in my fantasy leagues, if I'm not clearly in first place and have this amazing lead and have an amazing roster and phenomenal depth and no injuries plaguing my roster, I'd rather go down swinging. I'm trying to take as many big swings as I can rather than sitting there and doing nothing and being mediocre. Well, let's take all the chances we can. And I think right now with a lot of the bad juju around the Vikings, JJ McCarthy, everything that had been going on, Justin Jefferson becomes one of these perfect guys to go after, because whoever has had Justin Jefferson on their team has been absolutely decimated by it throughout the season. They've had only a couple of good games where Justin Jefferson is actually worth the draft value the draft cost that he had. So yeah, Dave, I love this one. And I think that's going to be the theme of today's show.
Yeah, I mean, just get talented players who are due for regression. That's kind of what we're doing at the midway point of the season. And at this point, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not like digging super deep in this one. We're looking for the obvious talented players who are just going to do better over the second half than they did over the first half.
And I'll say this. One of my guys was a first round pick in fantasy. Another one was a second round pick. Another one was a third round pick. And another one was a fifth round pick. We are going for swings on players that, the value should have been there, but it's not. And that's going to lead me into my first trade target that I think we should be buying low on, and it's Ashton Jeanty, who right now running back 18 on the season, despite some just like weird, inconsistent usage. Like we go back to last week, Dave, and last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, a massive game script thing and just like the game just gets away from them. Game just gets away from them. The like we can just fold that one away, file it away for like game that likely doesn't happen again, where the team just stops using Ashton Jeanty. We're going into the bye week. We come back out. That yeah, they've got a couple of tough matchups here, Jacksonville and Denver, but just let's take a whole look at the body of work here. Running back 18 on the season, like I mentioned, 7th in carries per game, which is just he continues to get that volume. We know that everything is going to be running through him. 9th easiest remaining strength of schedule from week 10 through 17. That's when you're making your stretch of not only trying to make the playoffs, but then win in the playoffs. He's got the New York Giants in the championship game. And if there's a guy who, and we talked about the Giants multiple times, of being able to get beat on the edges by running backs, and if there's a guy who has made his way through college football, not quite yet in the NFL, but on getting these big breakaway runs to the outside, it's Ashton Jeanty. So I really like that matchup ahead, and we do have to be looking ahead to fantasy playoffs. It's just averaging over 4 yards per carry, which is, it doesn't tell you the whole story, right? Like I know that's kind of been the litmus test for running backs, is can they be above 4 yards per carry, 7th in missed tackles per attempt. Like there's so many things data points that I can throw out here that don't really tell you the story. For this, it's essentially going to be a bet on the talent. No matter what is happening at the quarterback position, no matter what is happening on this offense, I think the return of Brock Bowers is going to open things up even more. Teams will not be able to stack the box the way they are. We'll see what ends up happening with Jacoby Myers. But yeah, I want to go and I want to make a move for Ashton Jeanty here, especially coming out of the bye, where this team is going to say, okay, we've got to make the most of our first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked good throughout this entire season, and a lot of the advanced analytics, the tackle breaking ability, the yards after contact per attempt, he's passing all of that with flying colors. So, like, we know that he is a good running back. It's just been the entire offensive environment right now for the Raiders is concerning, and I think that's why some people might be trying to get out from underneath Ashton Jeanty. But I'm with you. I mean, sometimes it's just as simple as buying talented players. So, I mean, I still have Ashton Jeanty ahead of Breece Hall, ahead of Bucky Irving, ahead of DeAndre Swift, ahead of Chase Brown. I mean, I'm still viewing him as an RB1. I think to fade him any lower than that would just be foolish.
I mean, we're not far removed from back-to-back, or excuse me, 3 straight top 15 running back games from him.
Right.
I mean, we had an RB1 overall finish in week 4, but it's been the inconsistencies. It's looking at a week like week 3 and week 7 and saying, okay, that probably lost me my week. And so that's been the most recent taste in the mouth of fantasy owners, is having a performance that loses you your week. Then you have a bye where you don't even have many more. It's been 2 weeks where you're just like, I don't have value for Ashton Jeanty. That's kind of how I'm seeing this.
Yeah. Talented player that you can buy for cheap right now. That is the theme of today's show.
Yep. Simple. All right. Who's your next guy?
You're never going to believe this, but another talented player that you can buy for low that I expect to have a better second half of the season than he had a first half of the season.
Shocking.
How about it?
Yeah.
As Zay Flowers, I talk about this regression modeling that I ran this morning. Justin Jefferson had the the lowest percentage, and then Zay Flowers was the second fewest fantasy points. He only has 1 touchdown with 55 targets this year. That's just unbelievable. And now we expect Lamar Jackson to be back, and that's really the big thing here. And because of that, you might not be able to buy low. I think most managers have just been waiting for Lamar Jackson to come back, but very similar to what I said about Justin Jefferson. 7th among wide receivers in target share, 8th among wide receivers in yards per route run, an elite target share, elite efficiency, and just not scoring touchdowns. I think that's going to change when Lamar Jackson gets back. I mean, this guy had 41 passing touchdowns last year. We know that we get those explosive plays. We know that Zay Flowers is the clear number 1 guy here. So looking at my rest of season rankings, some guys that I would happily trade away for Zay Flowers if I could: Chris Olave, Brian Thomas Jr., DK Metcalf. All guys right now who are getting a little bit more buzz. And, I don't expect them to have quite as good second halves of the season as I'm projecting for Zay Flowers.
You out on Olave with the Tyler Shuck switch at quarterback?
I wouldn't say out, but I would rather take.
You're just more in on Lamar and Flowers.
Right. Give me 8 targets per game from Lamar Jackson instead of 10 targets per game for Tyler Shuck. So I'd expect Chris Olave probably to have more usage from here through the end of the season, but I think the efficiency more than makes up for that in this Ravens offense. Also, I mean, I will say we're not going to speculate too much on trades, but less than a week until the NFL trade deadline, and we're getting it from Schefter, Pelissero, Rappaport. Like, everybody is talking about how the Saints are trying to ship either Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed. So either Chris Olave is landing in a better situation or he's going to see even more targets. So Chris Olave, another guy that maybe is worth a buy in some leagues. Look at that. We said 8, then we added a 9th, and now we even got a 10th one working in here talking about Olave.
You got to keep the odd numbers. We'll figure out one more person to add in here. That's what our good friend Clayton always says here at Football Guys. Go for the odd numbers. I'm going to give you my next
Olamide
guy.
Zaccheaus, 46 targets,
Nope.
not a single touchdown yet this year.
And
There's our 11th.
moving past that. Moving well past that. Next on here. Another big name, a guy who's been disappointing, and for some people was a first-round pick, for most, second-round pick, Nico Collins, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. And this is coming off a game where the Texans were very, very good. They looked like a very different team. We got a glimpse of what a good CJ Stroud can look like. Offensive line is figuring it out, and a lot of it too is just kind of going back schematically to like what has been successful for CJ Stroud in the past, what has been successful for the Texans in the past. And one thing that was interesting, and Hayden Winks over Underdog Fantasy does great work. He mentioned something that I also found watching through the film on NFL Pro and doing some of the NFL Next Gen insights there. Texans are using a 6th offensive lineman on a large portion of their plays where they're coming out in 2 wide receiver sets. And this was a big change for the Texans offense where they allowed a season low 21.4 pressure rate against the 49ers in week 8. And that is despite the 49ers blitzing at a season high rate. So that's been the biggest problem with the Houston Texans is, can CJ Stroud get time to sit in the pocket and make plays? Nico Collins has had the lowest yards per route run of his career this year because of the fact that the Texans offense doesn't have time to let plays develop. And that is something new that we are going to be able to see, hopefully, now going forward. Once again, this is a big swing. Take the big swings. You got a guy that's coming off of injury, but he's also coming off of, looking at this correctly, a 10-target game just a couple weeks ago prior to the concussion. So there are a lot of matchups that are going to pin the Texans against some good offenses with beatable secondaries. And one thing I think that might be viewed as a negative, but I'm viewing it as a positive, is Jaden Higgins went out, good game. Jalen Noel, good game. Xavier Hutchinson, good game. To me, what that does is that creates ambiguity in that wide receiver room. It doesn't give me a surefire second guy or third guy that I really need to be worried about taking targets away from Nico Collins. What it does is it keeps that group ambiguous and allows Nico Collins to continue to be the lead target earner. So I'm willing to make this swing on Nico Collins.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about Nico Collins too much as a buy low candidate, but you do make a strong argument there for it. We know he's a good player. I think there are going to be some boom bust tendencies just because of how this Texans offense operates right now. But I love that you talk about the 6 linemen. That's something we saw the Lions start toying with a couple of years ago. Now we see the Steelers are doing it often. The Lions are doing it. We'll see them like bring out this 6 tackle and then put him in the backfield and then put him in motion again and have him kind of like bunched up to the right. Like some really fun things with offensive schemes and formations this year. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the best way to make up for a very bad offensive line is just to outnumber them and have 6 on the field instead of 5. And the Texans seem to be doing that.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's go to the next one on here. We each have given 2 trade targets that we're looking at. You know what? Actually, let's do kind of our bonus right here because you mentioned the Lions.
Yeah.
And fun guy that I wanted to bring up is Jameson Williams. You had a fun personal story on this one because Jameson Williams, I don't think has been a lower price potentially even in his career. What a crazy way to look at this from last year preseason to now, where we're at with Jameson Williams coming off of a 0 reception game, and then we've got the wide receiver coach coming out and Detroit Lions coaching staff saying we've got to figure out ways to get Jameson the ball. Like we have not done a good enough job doing that. This has been a very different team this year where Jameson is getting targeted way downfield for the big plays again and not getting the simple receptions like he was last year, Dave. So I think both of us would agree he's probably a decent buy low candidate right now.
Yeah, and I last week when Jameson Williams was on bye, no surprise to anybody, but a lot of the offenses that I invested very heavily in this offseason, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Lions, they were all on bye last week. So I was really hurting through some bye weeks. And I started throwing some offers out there for Jameson Williams, just looking for guys that I could get in my starting lineup. And when I saw some of the offers that, like, I thought I was selling low on Jameson Williams and they were getting like laughed at and denied, then I was like, okay, so Jameson Williams is now a buy because I sent out an offer for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. That got rejected. I sent out an offer for Isaiah Pacheco. That got rejected. I sent out an offer for Stephon Diggs. That got rejected. So, like, I kind of viewed Jameson Williams as more valuable than all those guys and thought that I was like giving these other trade partners a favor to help me out to set a lineup during bye weeks. And when all of those were getting rejected, I was just like, well, Jameson Williams probably a guy I'm going out to buy if that's how the market is viewing him right now.
It's crazy. And looking at the matchups ahead, Minnesota, Washington, Philly, New York Giants,
Yeah.
Dallas, Pittsburgh, these are all very, very beatable secondaries for Jameson Williams. And he's got that week 17 at Minnesota in the dome.
Oh,
Uh, you put Jared Goff in a dome in some good weather. Hoping, doesn't Minnesota have the retractable roof now? Has that like,
I don't
I'm
think
not
so. And
up
if
to
they
date on
do,
my Minnesota architecture.
if they did, it would be closed in December.
They're
I'd
crazy
imagine.
enough to open it. They're crazy enough to open it.
But also, I want to say I saw a quote from Dan Campbell just a couple of days ago where he was
Mhm.
like very heavy-handed in talking about how spent the bye week reviewing film and like we just need to get and it was weird. He never actually like said Jameson Williams' name specifically, but was like very
I know.
clearly talking about Jameson Williams. We've got these big play speed receivers that just aren't getting involved and want to make a very concerted effort to get them the ball after the bye.
Looking at
So
you, Khalif Raymond.
right.
Yeah.
As Quintez Cephas still on the lineup? No, I mean they're
No.
talking about Jameson Williams, and we know this is a good player. I mean, he was the wide receiver 19 on a per game basis last year in
Yeah.
fantasy football. And then they give him $80 million and his target share just falls off a cliff. That to me doesn't make any sense. Like, this is a young, talented player. They're going to get him involved. That you don't pay a guy $80 million just to run clear out routes for Amon St. Brown. That's not what's happening here.
And I got to be honest with the audience here. Like, there's nothing we can tell you from a statistical standpoint that says,
Nothing.
yes, like it just needs the touchdowns to break the right way. Like, no, like there
Trust
hasn't
us,
even
bro.
been the target volume. Yeah, trust me, bro. Source, I made it up. Like it just look at the depth chart. Look at the body of work from Jameson Williams. Look at the offense for the Detroit Lions. I'm looking at the wide receivers, Dave, and like I just needed that reminder. I'm like, who else? When you made the joke about Quintus Cephas, it's Isaac Tisla, who fun player, hasn't turned into anything, Khalif Raymond, and Dominic Lovett. That's it. Like, it's Amon St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta. These are the guys catching passes. Jameer Gibbs is catching passes as well. Like, this is still a very condensed route tree. And if the Lions are able to get their offense back on track and actually make Jameson Williams a concerted part of their offense, this is one of the easiest buys because like people just don't even want him. Go out and trade anything for Jameson Williams. Add him as your wide receiver 4 as a fun
Yeah.
flex play on weeks where you're like, well, I'm projected to lose by 30 points. Why wouldn't you want this?
And I guess if I have to make some statistical argument, he's 24 years old, like still very much so on the upswing of his career.
Sure.
And he's averaging 25 yards per game less than he did last year. His touchdown volume is expected to be less than half of what it was last year. So this is just like simple regression. Like, players don't just fall off the age cliff at 24 years old. Like, this is a small sample size. To me, it's almost like Lad McConkey, where like the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, everyone was panicking about Lad McConkey, and then he just like turned into Lad McConkey, and we're like, oh yeah, that was silly. Like, that was just a little blip on the radar of his career. That's kind of what I'm looking at for this first half of the season with Jameson Williams. Like, it would be insane for him to continue producing like this.
All right. Well, you and I each have 2 more players to talk about here. So, Dave, hit us with your third trade target you're looking to buy low on.
This might be my biggest buy low. And funny enough, I know when I was talking about Justin Jefferson, I was like, I'd trade this guy for Justin Jefferson. That doesn't mean that he's not a buy low. There's just a tiers of difference here. Quinshon Judkins is a guy that I'm trying to trade for right now. I think there's just so many reasons why you can buy low right now. One, he's coming off a down game. He is injured, dealing with an AC joint sprain, and he's on bye. So I think a lot of people right now are anxious to move a guy like this that's not going to do anything for him this week. Our Adam Hutchinson doesn't even expect him to be back in a week 11. So our Adam Hutchinson is saying that a week 12 return, he said, of running backs who have suffered an AC joint sprain, over 70% of them miss at least 2 games. So not just the bye, but probably missing some time after that as well. So this is a bye reserved for your teams that are sitting in first, second, third place. Like, if you're a last place team, don't go out and trade for Quinshon Judkins because you probably aren't going to make the playoffs after making that move. But he has the easiest running back schedule remaining. And again, just like with Justin Jefferson, it's not just the overall schedule, it's that playoff schedule that I get really excited about. In week 15, Chicago is averaging or giving up an average of 4 points per game more than other teams. We got Buffalo, who's given up an average of 4.7 more points per game to running backs. And then Pittsburgh giving an average of 1.7 more points per game to running backs. So that's 3+ matchups through the fantasy playoffs. And sure, he might miss a handful of games. He might not be 100% when he does return, but I'm guessing that by week 15, he should be near 100% and has 3 really nice matchups here. So some guys that I would trade for Quinshon Judkins right now: Travis Etienne, Tyrone Tracy, Chase Brown, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Brian Thomas Jr. That's a trade that I sent out this morning and rejected, unfortunately, but I tried. Marvin Harrison Jr., Quentin Johnston. I mean, those are some big names that I'm trying to trade to get Quinshon Judkins on my team. But again, this is only reserved for your teams that are doing well right now. If you're sitting, bottom of the barrel in your league, below 500, probably not trying to trade for Quinshon Judkins. But if you're looking for that hammer that can help you win a league late in the year, Quinshon Judkins is a fantastic target.
Yeah, I think the struggle with that is not that he's a bad player or like whatever. I think it's gonna be extremely hard to get Quinshon Judkins. Like even after whatever. It's just there's a mythos that gathers around these players
Oh,
where it's like
100%. Yeah.
whoever drafted them was like, I made the right call. I made it late in my draft. I did this. They will be 1-7, stare you in the face and be like, but I have Quinshon Judkins, you bleep.
I mean, that's
Like,
exactly what I
and
was told today. Hey,
I'm gonna
workhorse
keep
running
going.
backs don't grow on trees. And I'm like, okay, but I'm giving you workhorse, like
Apparently,
I'm giving you wide receiver
neither do
twos.
wins.
Yeah. I mean, it is tough. I mean, like the idea of making a trade is much more easier than the reality of pulling
Sure.
off a trade. But like Brian Thomas Jr., he's still got some buzz. Quentin Johnston, I think a lot of people are hoping that he can just heal up and return to who he was early in the season. I think you could do that. Tyrone Tracy right now, we're expecting big things from Tyrone Tracy with Cam Scadaboo out for the year.
Would
Chase
you
Brown,
package?
he's been hot for
Would
the
would
last couple of weeks.
would you package Tracy and let's just go all in, right? If you're going all in for a player like Judkins, let's say Tracy and Brian Thomas Jr. for Quinshon Judkins. It's rich.
That's probably a little too much. Yeah, I think that's where I draw the line just because, I mean, like the difference between Tracy and Judkins is probably what, like 3 to 4 points per game if we're looking at season long projections here. Quinshon Judkins is also going to miss a couple of weeks. And Brian Thomas Jr., I mean, I know I talked about him as a sell last week, but his value has just continued to crater as we're getting all this hype about Travis Hunter right now. That I mean, like Travis Hunter, or I'm sorry, Brian Thomas Jr., like his ceiling is still being a top 10 wide receiver at the end of the day. And he does
Mhm.
have a dangerous floor there. But man, I'd feel really dumb if I traded Brian Thomas Jr. away. He returns to being a wide receiver one, and then I'm just sitting here with an injured Quinshon Judkins. So I think, if it's just Brian Thomas Jr., I do it. But I think Brian Thomas Jr. and Tyrone Tracy, that's given up a lot.
And sometimes I really don't mind losing these trades or
Yeah.
perceived losing them. For what you mentioned there, it's like, what's going to be the difference between Tyrone Tracy and Quinshon Judkins? 3 to 4 fantasy points per game. Sometimes like that is the difference maker in these
Right.
matchups.
Yeah.
And when I don't know, and I'm saying like, man, I can't really trust Brian Thomas Jr. It's been so hit or miss. I can actually get rid of some of these volatile players and get someone like a Quinshon Judkins. I'm not saying go out and make this trade. I'm just like, this is like a little game theory talk, I think,
Mhm.
that where I actually more often than not, I get willing to perceived lose on these trades because it can give me some semblance of, and we always talk against this in the pre-draft, but consistency. Now that we are in season and we know who these players are, I've got a guy I can start every single week.
It's funny too, just like, since you brought up the preseason, I'll just like, we are so confident about everything in the preseason. And like, I
Yeah,
can't believe you draft this player ahead of this player. And I was
wild.
just looking through ADP the other day. Remember we were talking about Rashi Rice? You and I were both saying like this guy should be a round 4 pick.
Yep.
Have you looked back at what round 4 of fantasy drafts was
Not
last year?
great. Not great,
Joe,
Bob.
Joe Burrow, Garrett Wilson, Alvin Kamara, George Kittle, Marvin Harrison, Jalen Hurts, Mike Evans, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Travion Henderson, James Cook, DJ Moore. I mean, some of it's been injury related, but like I take Rashi Rice over all of those guys with the benefit of hindsight. Like we are so confident in the preseason that everybody's going to hit and that we've got our rankings perfect. And then it takes half a season to look back and be like, what were we doing in round 4?
Dude, somewhere there's somebody with George Pickens, Emeka Ibuka, Chris Olave, and Rasheed Rice, and they're just like, I am
Mhm.
wealthy.
Yes.
I am a fantasy deity at this point. All right. I believe it's my turn now because I
It
got two.
is.
You've got one left.
Yep.
I'm going with Ricky Pearsall here, guy who we talked a lot about in the pre-draft process. And Dave, prior to his injury, wide receiver 16 in fantasy, everything was going along as scheduled. And then the injury happens, and the injury was said to have taken 4 to 5 weeks to recover. We're there. And Ricky Pearsall was asked yesterday. We're recording this Wednesday at 12. This is 12:11 p.m. Eastern time. So if a report comes out after, I am sorry. But yesterday, Kyle Shanahan spoke and said, we hope to see Ricky Pearsall out at practice. So it's West Coast time. We'll see if he is out there. He could be making his return this week. And I'm looking back to wide receiver 17 in usage rates. He had a deep threat role that was very much intact in this offense. 2 games with 100 plus yards. He had 1 game with, I believe it was 11 targets. Like, this is a guy who took over as the wide receiver 1 on this team. Now, even with George Kittle back, I don't think that takes anything away from Ricky Pearsall because Juwan Jennings hasn't really been able to take hold of the wide receiver room. We've seen how good Kendrick Bourne can be. Put Ricky Pearsall back into his role. All of a sudden, we're talking about a guy who is an immediate fantasy starter, a wide receiver 2, week in and week out. This San Francisco 49ers offensive line has been struggling to run block. That's led to a higher passing rate, even with Mac Jones being out there on the field. I do see this as a guy who can continue to come back in, lead the team in targets once he's healthy. Yes, even with George Kittle on the field, Brandon Ayuk's practice window has still not opened up. And when he was asked about it, Kyle Shanahan was like, "Yeah, no, we're not trying to open that up right now. Like, I'd be surprised if it was opened up anytime soon." It sounds like we're looking at another 5, 6 weeks before Brandon Ayuk is out there on the field. So yeah, we talked about swings, we talked about risks. Yes, there is the MCL recovery that Ricky Pearsall is going through, but I'm willing to take this swing.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Ricky Pearsall. You know this. Like you and I talked about Ricky Pearsall all preseason and
Mhm.
loved what I saw at the beginning of the year. Like sixth in the league still in receiving yards per game. Like he looked awesome. I think this is one that I don't know if I'm really trying to buy here though, just because like so
Okay.
much of this offense has changed. I feel like he kind of missed the window. Like had he been healthy for the first 6 weeks or something, he could have like really entrenched himself as the wide receiver 1. But I do
What
have a
changed for
fear
you?
that
Like when
Juwan
you say the
Jennings is
offense has changed, yeah.
Juwan Jennings getting healthier by the week. George Kittle back out there
Is
now.
he?
I mean, he looked okay last week. George Kittle did. And Juwan Jennings. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be 100% this week, but like just getting healthier with every given week, or so we assume. Kendrick Bourne kind of had this weird breakout. Brandon Ayuk now is going to be back late in the year, and now we've got Brock Purdy dealing with a toe injury as well. So you know, in theory, I want to buy Ricky Pearsall because I just believe in the talent. And I guess, as I'm talking myself into it, like
If
everybody probably has these same concerns about Ricky Pearsall. So I guess it just comes down to like what the cost is. Like
it's
if you can,
perception.
yeah, yeah. So I guess like, let me think about it right now. Because
What if Ricky
Pearsall,
Pearsall does the Brian Thomas thing from last year? If Brock
right.
Purdy is not able to come back and you've got Mac Jones with Ricky Pearsall and Ricky Pearsall retains this deep threat role that he had, we're talking about a guy who turns into a Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
So I think it just again comes down to like the cost. So like I'm looking at my rest of season rankings and like Brian Thomas Jr., Michael Pittman, Marvin Harrison, probably not moving those guys for Ricky Pearsall. I think that's probably a little bit too rich. But if I could move off of a Keenan Allen or a Terry McLaurin, Jameson Williams, who we talked about as a buy, like I would trade Jameson Williams away for Ricky Pearsall. That's a move that I think I'd be comfortable making.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know. I don't think anyone's doing that. Like you were just telling me the story now, where it's like nobody wanted Jameson Williams in your league.
Right. Right.
That's the thing. Is like I don't think anyone's making that. I do think like yeah, it's probably going to be one of these where you're going to have to trade someone. I probably should have had like some targets ready to go. Like
Like
honestly,
Cortland Sutton, like would you prefer
I that
Cortland
was the
Sutton at this
name I
point
was
or
just gonna say. I was just gonna say Cortland Sutton. I was about to say honestly, I'd trade Cortland Sutton for Ricky Pearsall at this
I have
point.
him one spot ahead in my rankings, but like again, like at that point, it's so close that it's like a personal preference thing. Like if you prefer Cortland Sutton, I've got right now, I've got Ricky Pearsall bunched in a tier with Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, and Travis Hunter. So that's kind of where I'm viewing Pearsall rest of season. So yeah, I think it just comes down to cost. Like if you can get him for cheap, and the thing is, like Ricky Pearsall, like he had been steamed all the way up into like rounds 4 and 5 of fantasy
Hmm.
drafts right now. So people that drafted him,
Whoever
they
drafts
might
him.
be hurting a little bit, and you might be able to get him for cheap right now if that guy is hurting, sitting below 500. So I think it's worth it. It just comes down. I have altered my expectations slightly, where I was hoping he could be like a top 10 guy. Now I'm kind of hoping he can be more of a wide receiver too when he comes back.
I think what you can do too is what I've come to find is people always want to hold on to running backs. So like I find that not a lot of people actually trade away their running backs, but when you
Right.
offer one up, even a bad one, they're like, "Ooh, yeah, that's a starting running back in the NFL." Tony Pollard is a guy I think like you could just ship away, and people still look at it as starting running back. Um, Dave
Somebody
Montgomery
offered
still,
me
huh?
last week, and they pulled it off the table before officially offering it, texted me and said, "Hey, would you give me Kyron Williams for Rashi Rice?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, send the offer." And then he was like, "Ah, I thought about it and I changed my mind." And I'm like, "You
See,
but I'm
see,
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, and that's like a top
J.K.
3
Dobbins.
wide receiver for a low end RB1.
Yeah, dude. Like I'm saying, like there's sort of a running back premium that people love. So like
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins, I think, is another interesting one here. Chuba Hubbard, probably last chance to sell on him. There's a couple of these names that are, quote, starting running backs in the NFL right now. Not that J.K. Dobbins has been bad. That was not meant to insinuate that. All right, last players for each of us, Dave. Go ahead. Give us your last trade target.
Just another prime regression candidate here. Among running backs with 100 plus touches, only Alvin Kamara has fewer points from touchdowns than Jaylen Warren does. I mean, he has 1 touchdown on 102 touches. This just isn't going to last. He's going to start scoring touchdowns. This guy is one of the few workhorses in the NFL, top 20 in almost every single opportunity metric. But it's not just the opportunity, it's also the efficiency. He's fourth in receiving yards per game behind only Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and Bucky Irving. And his rushing efficiency has also been great. He's fifth in the league in yards per touch. He's seventh in rushing EPA among all running backs. And then he's also seeing light boxes. He's seen the fifth fewest of average defenders in the box of any running back out there. On top of that, he also has the sixth best remaining running back schedule. So I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out at you, but this is a guy who is getting a lot of touches, efficient with his touches, and shocker, has a good second half of the season schedule. So Jaylen Warren, another guy that I'm trying to trade for right now. I would gladly trade away Alvin Kamara, Rico Dowdle right now, who's been red hot, Omarion Hampton, who like, yeah, he'll come back from IR at some point, but like, give me the guy who's healthy and playing now over Hampton. Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr. These are all guys that I'd happily trade away for Jaylen Warren right now.
Jaylen Warren has a really nice schedule coming
Yeah.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can throw out all of the worries of Caleb Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell. Um, Honestly,
Caleb
even at this
Johnson.
point,
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
I think even like, dude, the worries of like, oh, will they trade for another wide receiver? Cool. Open the offense up a little bit more. Give Jaylen Warren even more space to run. Like it just, I mean, maybe we're being foolish, but I don't see a world here where things get worse for Jaylen Warren unless there's just injury or Aaron Rodgers totally falls apart.
Yeah. And that's where I am too. I mean, this guy's always been efficient. Like usually when we see these like very efficient third down backs in a growing role, we almost always see the efficiency start to taper off. And it's just not happening for Jaylen Warren. Like this to me feels very much like Tony Pollard when Tony Pollard was the backup to Ezekiel Elliott. And then Ezekiel Elliott got pushed out of the picture and we were like, all right, well, Tony Pollard's the lead back now, but no way can he maintain that efficiency. Guess what he did? He maintained the efficiency. And now with Jaylen Warren, like we've been waiting for years for Najee Harris to be out of the picture. And we said, well, surely the efficiency is going to dip now that he's on a bigger workload. And it's not. He's still the efficient tackle breaking, breakaway run machine that he's been throughout his entire career. He's just doing it on 3 times the workload now. So, yeah, this is just a better offense. I think the Steelers have looked better over the last few weeks than they did earlier in the year. Jaylen Warren is efficient. He's getting touches and he's got a nice schedule. Again, fits in perfectly with the theme of all of the guys that we are talking about on today's show.
Well, let's keep the theme going. So I've got T. Higgins, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, and there's just is this a word? A funness to
Funness?
the
Sure. Yeah, why
funness.
not? Yeah. We're
We can
podcasters. We're
make
allowed to make up words.
we
There's no
can make it a
rules.
word. Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
mic. You don't. Funness. Yeah. T. Higgins, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. For me, it's pretty simple. One, it's a talented player. It's an offense that has learned how to move the ball again. Luck did not break his way this past week, but under Joe Flacco, it has been a different offense. And first start for Joe Flacco, we're looking at 10 targets. Second start for Joe Flacco, we're looking at 2 targets. Like, things just simply did not break his way in that matchup. But I also just want to look at the recent change for T. Higgins. Things have started to click a little more. Weeks 1 through 5, 6.9 half PPR points per game. Weeks 6 through 8 here, 12.7 half PPR points per game. Like, we are looking at a different player throughout these weeks. Now, does that mean it's going to continue to elevate up? No. But the thing is that you're seeing glimpses of what this guy in the offense can be with Joe Flacco. And eventually, Joe Burrow could and should be back. But also, we're coming off of this game that was an absolute dud. Right, we're looking at, just want to confirm here, checks, notes, 1 reception, right? Like, I get it. There's a touchdown, but there's 1 reception. So I'm sure there's someone in your league that's saying, it's all just been the touchdowns that are here. That's what's holding everything up. I want to look at this differently. Flacco is pushing 38 plus attempts per game. There's been a big pass volume resurgence for this offense. The fact that the running game is even efficient now, like Chase Brown is highly efficient on the ground. There are so many things that defenses have to plan for with Cincinnati, and their defense is horrendous. Allowing Justin Fields and the Jets to be able to pass and score the way they did, we know that the Bengals are going to continue to have to pass. So with this many opportunities, with a player of this talent and a competent quarterback, yeah, I want to buy before we start to see the T. Higgins of old here on the field.
Yeah, and this is another one that, like, I'm gonna push back ever so slightly, just because, like,
Sure.
T. Higgins also, like, a lot of his production this year has come from touchdowns. So looking right now,
But it always has,
28.4%. That's like
right?
fifth most in the league, right? Yeah, and he does, like, he is a touchdown big play machine. But man, this is just like it's wild what we're seeing from Joe Flacco right now. Jamar Chase has pulled over 50% of the team targets since Joe Flacco has taken over. So I think there could be opportunities here down the road.
Is
And I
that
think
is
the big
Do you
thing here is
think that
buying low.
retains? Like, do you think that stays where it is? Like, I know it's obviously Jamar Chase is an incredible player, but don't we think there's some sort of regression to the mean in
Yeah.
terms of this
Yeah.
this target rate?
I mean, he's on pace right now for like 360 targets this year. I
Right.
don't expect that to maintain. Um, but I think like 35 to 40% target share, unheard of. Like, we never see anybody hit those numbers. It wouldn't surprise me if Jamar Chase does finish
Sure.
the year with that target share from Joe Flacco. And I think the big thing here is like buying low on T. Higgins, because I think
Yeah.
what you said, like the 1 catch, I think a lot of people are trying to say like, oh, this is my chance. Like, I can finally get out from T. Higgins, who has been such a disappointing pick this year. And maybe just like sending a trade offer out there, they might be like, oh, this sucker, like he just sees the points, doesn't realize that he only had 1 catch last week. So I think you might be able to get him for like really, really low. So again, like it all comes down to cost here. Stephon Diggs, Juwan Jennings, Terry McLaurin, Wandale Robinson, those are all guys that I'd happily trade away for T. Higgins, but do you think that's enough to get the deal done?
I don't. So one thing that happens too a lot with fantasy is we always bring up same position players, and that rarely happens in fantasy where you're just like, okay, cool, I'll swap for the same receiver and take a chance on this guy that I'm already taking chances every week with this position. Oftentimes it's a lot of like, I need a wide receiver for running back and forth. So what about this? What
Chuba
about
Hubbard, Woody Marks, Tyler
that's
Algier, Tony Pollard, those are all guys that
those
that's
are
kind
all
of where my
easy.
line would be, right?
I'm going higher. Ken Walker for T Higgins.
Oh, no, I don't think I can get there. I think I'd prefer Ken Walker.
Ken Walker's
And I know
dangerous to
we had like a
have.
big Ken Walker talk last week, like where I'm still holding on to my Seattle running backs just in case one of them goes down, the other would possess league winning upside. So I think that's why I'm holding on to Ken Walker.
Alvin Kamara.
I think I'd still prefer Alvin Kamara to T. Higgins
I'm
as
trading
well.
away Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
Ramondre Stevenson.
I'm holding Ramondre Stevenson
I'm
too.
trading away Ramondre Stevenson.
I think like for me, Isaiah Pacheco, dealing with the injury now, if you could do that, I would. But like, I'd prefer Tajay Spears, J.K. Dobbins, to T. Higgins right now.
All right. Well, that's a wet fart of a way for us to end the show, but it's week 9, folks. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
We want to throw Jerry Jeudy in there too, as we can make it
No.
12. No,
No.
Zero touchdowns on 54 targets is just. He's got to score a touchdown eventually, right? Or are we just looking at a Deontay Johnson season here?
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
Speaking of which, Deontay Johnson, did you see he worked out with the Giants yesterday?
To the Giants. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did it work for any of those other teams? No.
Nope.
But it might work for us.
Haha. All right. That's going to do it for us here today. We did, what, 9, 10, 11? We did a lot of trade targets for you guys to go and take a look at. Hopefully this is helpful for you.
We're at an even number. I think we got 12 sneaking Jerry Jeudy in there. So I don't know. Who's one more we want to sneak in? Devonta Smith. He doesn't have a lot of touchdowns. Trey Benson. Yeah, Trey Benson is a great way to end the show. I love that one. Trade for Trey Benson. Yeah, we're not even going to give analysis.
No analysis. We're just going to say names. We're dudes saying other dudes' names. That's what the show has devolved to. Yeah.
Finn.
Yeah. You're welcome. All right, everybody. We're going to be back again tomorrow going through our rankings and giving you the must-start players for week 9. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.